Well, they never own anything and they scramble your inner senses. So it's so hard to put words to what you're experiencing. And then, of course, they will just tell you you're wrong no matter what. Hello, and welcome to How to Be a Terrible Daughter, the podcast for anyone that's ever been called terrible or horrible by their family.
It's also the podcast where Elizabeth and I hate your parents for you in case you're just not having a day where you can do it for yourself. I'm Megan Caper, and I am a medical intuitive and healer, as well as an occupational therapist.
I'm Elizabeth Malamed. I'm a psychotherapist and a multimedia artist. And we're cousins.
We're cousins.
I love that we're cousins.
I was just thinking this morning about how much I love you. And I was like, wow, I'm really glad I have someone who's that good of a friend in my life. And it wasn't because I don't realize that you're my family. It's because I don't have any other models of family that I'm close to. So anyone that I'm this close to and trust this much and feel this safe with is a friend.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, that's why you got categorized that way in my brain. Not because like I didn't remember we were family or whatever, just you're the only one I have like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm glad I'm in a different file folder.
You are in a different file folder. So today we are doing narcissistic abuse part 2 because there's just not enough to go around for one part. Yeah, no, we did it last week and we didn't want to make the episode 14 hours long, but we also felt like there was some stuff we didn't cover that is important. Because again, this type of abuse and the type of thing that happens is so different from anything else you've ever experienced. And it's hard to tag some of the stuff as abuse. So I think it's really, really important to go through and just give like definitions and examples so that people can have a moment where they say like, oh my God, that was because my parent was a narcissist? Like, oh, because I know I've had those moments for sure.
Absolutely. Well, they never own anything and they scramble your inner senses. So it's so hard to put words to what you're experiencing. And then, of course, they will just tell you you're wrong no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to give sort of we did it last week, but I think it bears repeating. Do you want to give like a little summary of what narcissistic abuse is?
So narcissistic abuse is a type of emotional abuse where the abuser only cares about themselves and will use words and actions to manipulate your behavior and your emotional state. One of the things that's really tough about this is that one of the things that they use to manipulate you is they tell you that they care about you, or they're not honest about the fact that they only care about themselves.
So, yes, yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I think they do believe that for the most part. Like, it's not that they're lying. It's just that they don't understand what love and care feels like, either to receive or give. I don't know. Yes. Do you disagree?
No, I do. I do agree. Although I was also thinking about something else, which is that I was watching something on my feed and this person was talking about how for them, they learned that reality is malleable in a way. I think it has something to do with experiencing trauma and then being completely invalidated and shut down, which is, what they do. That reality is something that can be shaped and reformed to fit their needs in the moment. And so, yes, they absolutely believe what they're saying. That's really, really hard, right?
Yeah. I remember at one point I was in family therapy with my mom. One of my many attempts to salvage our relationship. And we were discussing when she got colon cancer when I was 16. And we were discussing that time. And I remember going to the hospital to visit her every day after school being very, very concerned. And I remember my grades slipping, which for me at the time as a perfectionist was, I was the person who cried if I got an A minus instead of an A. Like I was really, really hard on myself, which we could talk about how that came about in another episode. So I remember very distinctly going to visit her, being very concerned, worried, it affecting other areas of my life. And we're in family therapy, and her version of events was that I didn't care about her and I never came to visit her. Just that I was a cold, thoughtless child or whatever. This was probably 10 years after the fact. And I remember sitting in the therapy office, and I could tell that she believed it. I could tell that those were her memories. That's what she was remembering. In her mind, that was accurate. And I remember just thinking, I don't know a way forward here. Like, I don't know that therapy is going to work, because if we can't agree on some of the basic facts of what happened, or at least have our realities be close enough that I could be like, maybe it happened that way, and she could do the same thing. But it was so vastly different. And she felt so sure of her reality, and I felt so sure of my reality. And it was just like, and I had the receipts too. And that didn't even matter. Like, that was the thing,
And
like,
it's not an isolated incident.
No. But I just like that, to me, that was like sort of one of the things where I was just like, I don't know that I can have this work. I don't know that I can work through the pain of someone mistreating me with someone who doesn't even remember that those things happened.
Well, and it's also that, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, they force you into your reality. And it's like they try to shape you like putty to kind of fit into whatever story that they're telling. And so at that point, like when you are in therapy, you're at the point where you're like, okay, I do really want to work on this.
Yeah.
That it is a bridge too far. It's like, I don't have anything left in me that's flexible enough. I mean, that point feels like a betrayal. I can't meet you in the middle here anymore.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I feel like your use of the word betrayal is really, really apt, because the way that I've described growing up with a narcissistic mother to a lot of people, it's like if you remember your first heartbreak that you had, like your first crush or your first significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that sort of broke your heart. And that feeling of betrayal and heartbreak and crush, it was like that, only like every day. Like every day, something happened where I felt heartbroken. I felt betrayed and heartbroken. But the kicker of it was that was then denied. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least the person who broke my heart in junior high, my crush, like, admitted that they didn't want to be with me.
Yeah.
But what I would get from my mom was like, but I love you. I would never do that, And it was just such a, yeah.
Right. Well, and their love feels so bad. Like, it's like going to a well, for water, and you pick up a pail of sand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just makes you thirstier. And then they're just like, what are you talking about? This is the best water in the universe. How dare you be thirsty?
Right.
And don't you dare go anywhere else. This is the only well. This is the best well, and it's the only well. And I don't know why you're thirsty. How dare you?
Absolutely. I love that analogy. For me, it was like when you pull up the water and it's not sand, it's still water, but it's full of like floaty stuff, and it's green and there's like dead bugs in it. So you're like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, this is water, but I know this isn't good for me. In fact, I know this is going to make me sick.
This is going to give me emotional dysentery.
This is going to absolutely give me the emotional shits. But like, there's no other options. And I'm being told, like, this is what water is. What's wrong with you that you don't want to drink this water? Right?
Yeah, this is the cleanest water ever.
Yeah, this is what everybody else drinks. Are you a princess? What's wrong with you?
Stop puking and shitting everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes.
This is so embarrassing. And what else did you eat, or what else did you do to cause all of this, terrible illness, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Oh my God. All right. Well, we've started the podcast with dysentery metaphors. I don't know where we're going to go from here, but it's got to be good.
Actually, I do want to share something really great. So I was talking to my husband this morning. Mwah, shout out to my husband of the pod, about narcissistic abuse. And I said, so what makes narcissistic abuse different from other types of abuse? And he had something really great to say. He said, the real difference is the inconsistency. When you say something, you don't know if you've lobbed a grenade or lit a long fuse or it's going to be okay. You
Mm.
never know how what you've said or done is going to create a response. And then also, it's not just in the moment, right? In the moment. And then it could be a week later or 6 months later or 3 years later, they pull out this thing that you said or did in a moment of authenticity. And he said something really great also to kind of get more into this war theme, which is you don't hear the click when you step on the landmine.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk a little bit about narcissistic rage in this episode, but there's absolutely no tell or no warning. Things can go on as if what you said was totally fine and innocuous, which is how you meant it.
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah, a week later, a month later, 3 years later, the rage comes out about it, you know?
Uh-huh.
And in their mind, you knew what you did. So they've been holding on to this rage for so long, right? And you didn't say anything. You didn't apologize. You didn't admit it because, what you did was, and I am giving an example from my childhood here. You ate an apple out of the fridge when you were a child after school. It was apparently a special apple or an apple to be used for a special purpose. I didn't know that. And
Right. Of course you weren't told, right? Yeah.
I wasn't told. So I was just hungry after school and I went and got myself a snack. My point being, it can be something so innocuous that there's no way you could possibly imagine that that is something that would be insulting or infuriating or wounding to the narcissist. And yet they think you did it on purpose, right? Because again, we go back to this idea that they have no concept of a reality outside of what they are experiencing, right? They don't have that ability for empathy. Yeah, so I can't remember if it was a day later or a week later, but I got it for sure for eating that apple. Oh boy, was I a terrible daughter for that one. Just
Yeah.
awful. Just
It wasn't
selfish
even
and
a magic
awful.
apple. You know what I
No,
mean?
right?
I'm going to eat
Um,
this apple.
I
It's going to
know,
help me escape.
right? Exactly. I wish. So we started last week talking about some different types of narcissistic abuse. I feel like we should move on and talk about a couple more. Why don't we start with narcissistic rage? Since I was just talking about it.
Well, considering that like my mind goes fuzzy even when I hear those words.
I know. It's funny, like, so we have this list written down of what we want to go over, and I'm looking at the list and I am feeling like such resistance because even just like talking about this stuff is triggering. My brain doesn't want to go back there for good reason,
Yeah.
Like, thank you, brain, for not wanting to go back there all the time. I appreciate that. But yeah, narcissistic rage. So, ooh, how to explain this? When a narcissist perceives that they've been attacked. And I'm going to use the word perceive here because it could be something as small as somebody ate an apple that you were planning on eating later. So that could be an attack, right? You told a story a couple episodes ago about your mom and a friend who had MS and them canceling plans, right? Like
Yeah.
that can be an attack, right? I mean, like anything where they feel that's a good definition here, where they feel like they've been disrespected or taken down a peg, or where you do anything that may shatter their view of themselves or even put a crack in it.
Yeah, I think that there's these underlying ideas about how there are no accidents and someone's always to blame. So if
Not
things,
them.
yes, it's like it's always done on purpose. So there's this paranoia. And I think also a reflection of their own. It's like, well, everybody is this petty and angry and jealous. And that's why everybody does what they do, right? They're either fine or they are just evil.
Yeah. And I always say if you want to know what a narcissist is up to, just look at what they're accusing other people of.
Absolutely.
It's like a direct mirror,
And
really.
it's eerily accurate. And the thing that's so frustrating is that it doesn't actually translate to self-reflection in the sense it's like, how can you be so granular in your description of someone else, right?
Yeah. So, narcissistic rage, I was trying to think of how to describe this to people so that they'll understand. So, imagine that your closest friend went on the internet and made a video about the thing that's the last thing you would want known about yourself on the internet. Like just something that you have deep shame over, right? Or are deeply protective of. How mad you would be, right? I mean, you would just like, want to put a hex on that person, right? Like, how dare they? How dare they do that? You thought they were a friend.
See, I just don't tell anybody anything
Well, there's that.
as the child of a narcissist, right?
But the rage that you would feel when that much shame was provoked is what a narcissist feels when you do something minor or small or big or what, it doesn't matter. When you do something that somehow provokes them or makes them feel like, their ego or their sense of self is at risk.
You mean
So
like
it's
eating an apple?
like eating an apple, right? So it's that level of rage, but over like minor things, like things that you could not possibly imagine would be a thing that you would get that mad about.
Yeah.
It's a completely outsized reaction to whatever the circumstance is. And like you said, it's not consistent. So it's not always about the same things. It's intermittent. It's, it just depends, right? It just depends. And there's no rhyme or reason. So you can't figure it out.
It's like it's an elaborate pinball machine inside of them. And like, whatever you do, the ball goes in and then it's like ping, 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 ping. You can't track it and you don't know every place. And this is even as a therapist. I mean, it's like, you kind of map someone's psyche, right? But it's like you just can't, there's just no way. I also really get the sense that there's something infantile about it. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but I mean that kind of points to some kind of trauma or something that occurs really, really early. And I'm just off the cuff here. This isn't something that I really kind of fully developed, but that there is, when an infant, like when a newborn needs something, right? When their diaper needs to be changed or, they're hungry, they'll cry and they'll scream and whatever. I mean, like it's everything, right? It's their whole being, right? And sometimes there's this like outrage, right? This like, like I'm hungry, like I'm dirty, whatever. And that's fine. That is appropriate, right? That's all they know. But that is actually what happens. It feels that way. I don't know. Do you feel that way? Does that feel, is there something there, Megan? Or
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely feels like arrested development at various stages. So some of it
yes.
feels infantile, but some of it feels teen. Like there's ways
Oh,
sometimes that my mom acted that I felt like it was like a 13-year-old would do that. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But it just feels,
Especially cruel and mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And this sort of goes back to what we were talking about last time with borderline personality disorder, with sort of the little islands in the ocean, and the person doesn't feel like they're walking on a contiguous landmass. They're just like popping up in these different places, and in between they're drowning. And it sort
Mm-hmm.
of feels like that also with the developmental stages. Like sometimes I feel like my mom would pop up as an infant. I mean,
Yeah.
She could have narcissistic rage if she was hungry. Absolutely. Like, I wouldn't put that past her. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
And it would
yeah.
be someone else's fault. Like, how could you have taken us on a trip this long without planning a stop for food? Right. Like,
Right.
instead
It's
of
like,
just being like, hey, I'm hungry. Can we stop somewhere? So, but then sometimes, yeah, it was that like 13-year-old mean girl,
you
like,
mean malicious gossip, nitpicking, and emotional blackmail?
yes, more, these are more things on our list. Yeah. And the rage, so this sort of gets us into our next thing. The rage could look like a couple things. It could look like anger, just outright like screaming at you, but it can also look like withholding. It can also look like the silent treatment or
Yeah.
you don't deserve my love, sort of you were so horrible to me that I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to look at you. I'm not going to talk to you, which again feels so 13, like it just feels so like teenage.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. You're right. I think it can feel that way. I'm just sort of noticing in my body how we're talking about it. Like I can feel like the walls of my intestines kind of ripple a little bit. Oh, it's the dysentery. That there is just this like, even remembering, right? When my mom would really be like, you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve my love. You don't deserve to be a part of this family. You don't deserve this or that. And it's incredibly painful. And it's hard because, you go through this whiplash of rage, right, which is incredibly energetic and overwhelming. And then this withholding. And sometimes, like, they'll literally leave the room or whatever. And it's kind of like, you just don't know what to do with it.
You don't know what to do with it. The last thing I sort of want to talk about, because I think it's really important and also very specific to narcissistic abuse, is splitting. Can you give me like a little bit of what would be your definition of splitting, would you say? And then I'm sure we both have 1,000 stories that we can tell around this.
Well, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is the splitting that's done within a person, and then there's the splitting that's done between people. So the splitting that's done with two people is like, well, you were the horrible person, and this person's the wonderful person. I'm going to shit on this one person, and I'm going to praise this other person. Is that the kind that you're talking about?
Yeah. So yes, exactly. And usually, if there's two siblings or two people, two best friends or whatever, or two people, it's the golden child and the scapegoat.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So the golden child can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And the scapegoat can do no right. And
yeah,
it actually feels like it would be better to be in the golden child position, but it's not.
Nope.
I mean, the scapegoat, I think it's pretty obvious why it would be horrible to be the person who in their mind is the scapegoat, right? You can never do any right. No matter what you do, you're failing. But the problem with being the golden child is that you've been put up on a pedestal that is so high and is balanced on like a needle. It's so precarious that you aren't allowed to do anything wrong. Because if you do even the slightest thing wrong, you've betrayed them, right? You've betrayed the narcissist. And then that's when the rage comes out, right?
Yeah. And you know exactly what's going to happen because you have seen all of the abuse that the scapegoat has gotten. So like what the stakes are.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so you're really like dancing as fast as you can to stay the golden child. But it is exhausting and untenable.
Yeah.
I will say that a lot of my clients that I see in energy healing sessions that have especially like autoimmune disorders were the golden child.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Because your level of monitoring yourself and making sure you're doing everything right, while at the same time trying to monitor your parent and monitor what it is they want, right? Because that can change from day to day. You lose a sense of who you are. And you absolutely lose a sense of being able to be kind to yourself or give yourself a break. Do
Hmm.
real self-care, right? Not like bubble baths and,
Hmm.
a day at the spa, but like actual self-care where I'm emotionally loving and caring towards myself.
I really hear that because there's this confusion between what I am supposed to protect in myself and what I am supposed to eradicate, right? Because that's what the immune system does, right? It
Mm,
breaks down and eradicates viruses and threats to the system, right? But when, the autoimmune disorders is when you start attacking the self, right? Your own
yeah,
healthy systems and tissues and all that stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, I love how that's this mirror of enmeshment and a lack of boundaries and also splitting, right? To not know, what is the part of me that needs to be saved and nurtured and protected? And what is the part of me that needs to go? Which I will just say, the part of you that needs to go is your mom.
Yeah, well, but we internalize all of those things that our parents tell us, right? For better or for worse, we all do it as kids, right? That's one of the ways we learn. And if it's like you're constantly being told, you're amazing. I can't believe I have a daughter like you. I'm so lucky.
Uh-huh.
And at the same time, being told, you're not good enough. You've just humiliated me.
Yes.
Yeah, how can you possibly develop a healthy sense of self if you're simultaneously getting those two messages? You
Yeah.
know? Mm,
It's either you're all good or you're all bad. And the kicker is that it's always, right? And so here's this developmental thing, which is like, a kid thinks a rule is for forever, right? So until you're older and you can learn that there's context and stuff, but it's like if a narcissist decides that you are a terrible person, you've always been a terrible person and you're always going to be a terrible person. And boom, when they decide that you are a wonderful person, you have always been a wonderful person and you're always going to be a wonderful person. And it's one of those things where it's like you were talking a while back about the teapot, right?
mhm.
And the thing about it isn't just, am I a teapot and can I function as a teapot? It's, I am a teapot and right now you want a bicycle.
Mhm.
And so you're going to call me the worst bicycle in the whole world,
Yeah.
right? You're young enough, you don't know that you're a teapot and you're not supposed to be a bicycle, right?
Right.
You're supposed to be whatever. Like you're this group of atoms that is
Yeah.
supposed to coalesce into whatever this person needs, right?
And I think it's interesting what you said that, if you're, the beloved, you've always been the beloved. And if you're the terrible child, you've always been the terrible child. I think that's true on both sides of that. So the narcissist believes that, right? If in that moment you're the terrible child to them, they really do believe that you've always been the terrible child and they have
Yeah.
all this evidence for it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. If you're the golden child at that moment, you've always been the golden child and you will continue to be the golden child for the rest of their lives. But the
Right.
same thing is true for the child. Again, developmentally, when you're little, you don't understand. If you're the terrible child in mommy's eyes, you see all of the ways you've always been the terrible child, And
Yeah.
I think because our brains are wired towards negativity bias, we're wired towards looking for danger and we're
Mm.
wired towards looking for things we should be aware of. I think as we grow up, we start to identify more with being the terrible daughter and those moments than we do with being the golden child. Because the golden child was precarious. The terrible daughter, at least it was like, well, you know, can't get worse than this. There's nowhere down to go from here, right? And being constantly thrown between being perceived in those two ways. Yeah, I mean, I think there's also an aspect of learned helplessness here too, where you just sort of go like, okay. I mean, that's sort of like the name of this podcast, like, okay, fine, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
And we can now say it with a sense of sort of irony, right? Like, yeah, I'm a terrible daughter, fine, whatever. But
Yeah.
I think for years I believed it. It was not ironic. It was actually like how I thought of myself, right?
Yeah.
So,
I know for me, like that illusion really only broke when I had absolutely been the best daughter I knew how. That was including all of my professional capabilities. And I was very aware that what I was offering was way above and beyond. And it was as if it was nothing, as if I'd never given anything in my entire life. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm out. I am out.
Yeah. Okay, we need to switch topics to our mini crazy mom off. So if you haven't tuned into the podcast before, at the end of every episode, we trade stories, one story each of something super crazy that our mom did. And then we decide who is the winner that week of the crazy mom off.
It is the trauma Olympics.
It is, it is
Short
the
form.
Trauma Olympics. I feel like we need a theme song or something, which I still think should be the song Mother by the Police. I think that is our theme song. Anyway, do you want to go first or should I go first? How are you feeling today?
I'm happy to go first if you would prefer.
Do it.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your traumatic story, Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. So I'm so grateful because a third party was in my parents' house recently, and he actually brought it up to me, which was so nice. But in my bathroom, I don't even know. I mean, I was a kid, baby, whatever. My mother had put a framed quotation from Thomas Jefferson, which tells you alone, right? I mean, just like the slave owner, child rapist.
It's so
right?
child appropriate to have Thomas Jefferson. Like, I can't, when I go on Pinterest and I look up little girls' rooms, there are always framed pictures of Thomas Jefferson quotes.
Yeah. Give me a quote from Sally Hemings. Okay. So, and my brother had one for him, right? Okay. I'm going to give you the quote verbatim because I spent my entire life reading this over and over. This is to his 11-year-old daughter. I'm so mad. Okay. I'm already so mad. Be you from the moment you rise till you go to bed as cleanly and properly dressed as at the hours of dinner or tea. Nothing is so disgusting to our sex as a want of cleanliness and delicacy in yours.
I don't even know where to start with how wrong that is. I mean, okay, so we can start with the like blatant and overt sexism. We can just start there.
My body is on fire. Like my body is on fire. Like I feel it. Okay,
but then also it's like instructions for how to be invisible, right? Like instructions for how to be pleasing, and which is exactly what the narcissist wants. I mean, okay, so don't get me started on how all of the systems that we live under, like patriarchy and capitalism, are actually narcissistic systems. We're going to have to do a whole separate podcast on that. But and the thing is, I can totally see how your mom aspired for that for herself. Do you know what I mean? And so she was, and failed, by the way, because she was not invisible or pleasing in any way. She thought that she was, I'm sure. That's the other thing, is like the difference between what a narcissist thinks they're like and how they're presenting themselves to the world versus how they are is such, like, there cannot be a wider chasm. But also, just, did she, oh my God, I don't know where to start with that. It's so wrong on so many levels. And to have that, oh, I wish I could go back in time and take that from your bathroom wall and take a big shit on it. That's what I wish.
That, you know what? I love that image. I think that's going to be like an earworm for me. But actually, it's more like, actually, no, take me with you. Shit on that and then take me with you. Yeah.
Well, I would have had to have taken you with me, because can you imagine what your mom would have done if she'd come into your bathroom and found that on the floor with a pile of turd on it?
Oh, my God. Oh.
So, of course, I would have taken you with me.
That's chef kiss. So I thought it was great just to imagine you shitting on this thing, but imagining her finding it. Oh, the fire is soothed just a little bit.
My God, your mom. Oh, what a hypocritical Ugh, God, I don't even have words. She's terrible. I'm so happy that you don't have to live in that house anymore and you don't ever have to look at that again.
Thank you. I am actually going
Wow.
to have to check in with you at some point at another time about your response because, like, I'm feeling my stuff, but so, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. We
so.
can, yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. My mom at least waited until I moved out to redecorate my room like that. Like I remember I came back from college, after like whatever, you come back Thanksgiving break, so it's after like 2 months or something. And my room had been completely redecorated and repainted and was all done in like Ralph Lauren and stuff like that. But at least she waited until I sort of left.
Uh, my mom didn't have to redecorate because there wasn't anything in view that was actually mine.
Well, and can I just say, I went into your house for the first time in probably 35 years a couple weeks ago. I hadn't been inside it in a really long time. And the fact that your bedroom still looked exactly like it did when we were kids, I seriously got like horror movie creepy vibes. Like it was so bizarre to walk into what is clearly a little girl's room. And I was thinking, you lived there until you were 18. Like, this shouldn't have looked like, even if she kept it the way it was when you moved out, it should have looked like an 18-year-old's room. This looked like a 10-year-old girl's room. And it was so creepy, like complete with a dollhouse. And it was so creepy. It was so weird. And I remember in the moment just feeling like my heart just went out to you that you had
Oh.
to grow up in this like horror movie creepy room that you weren't allowed to change or do anything to. And the
Can I tell
Thomas
you something?
Jefferson quote is just like chef's kiss on
Yeah,
top of all of
totally.
that.
Can I tell you something even creepier?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it until a couple weeks later, but she did make one change to the room, which is that she moved the bed so that it was in the corner. And the only place that I had in my room that was private was behind the bed because the bed was like, it wasn't against the wall. And
Right.
so, like, I had my little record player,
Yeah.
right? And my music. And that was the only place I could actually not be in view if someone passed by. So she took the private place
She
away.
took it away. She took it
Yeah,
away. Oh my God.
I know.
Your mom. Oh, Jesus.
I know.
All right, my story is actually kind of funny. I think,
Oh, good.
although,
You think.
although, yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's a phenomenon where I tell stories that I think are funny and other people are horrified. So we'll see.
Mhm.
Okay, so just to set the scene, when I was in my mid-20s, I finally decided to stop talking to my mom. I went what's called no contact with her, where I didn't ever have any contact with her at all, even like family occasions, nothing, just cut her off completely. And I can talk later about like why I decided to do this, but just to set the scene, this is what had happened. And I was now in my late 30s. So it had been about 13, 14 years since I had cut off contact with her. At this point, I don't think she knew where I lived. She didn't have my phone number and she didn't have my email, but she would get those things from other people. Like she would make up some story about why she needed them, usually having to do with being concerned about my mental health. Anyway, okay, so here I am, 30 something years old, sitting in front of my computer. I haven't heard from my mom in any way, phone, email, anything in like 15 years. All of a sudden, an email pops up in my inbox from her. Now, as far as I know, she doesn't have my email. So this is creepy in the first place because how did she get my email? Right? I open it up. It is addressed to me. The email address is to me. The subject line is something like our lunch the other day or something like that, which I was like, what? And
Wow.
then I look down and it's like, dear somebody, some name I'd never heard before. I'm just going to say like Claire. So clearly like a friend of my mom's, but my mom went through friends like, you know, every 6 months she had a new best friend and, her old best friend had done something horrible to her that she could never forgive, right? So
Uh-huh.
I don't know who this person is, but that's not unusual, right? Dear Claire. And I'm like, Claire? Who was Claire? The first paragraph is just sort of like, it was so nice to see you for lunch the other day. Like, thanks for trying this new restaurant with me, whatever. It was like pretty normal, right? That you would write to someone who you had had lunch with the week before. The second paragraph. Now, before I say this, I want to say I did not know Claire. Claire did not know me. This is not somebody who I'd ever met or had met me in my life. The second paragraph started.
I'm already getting chicken skin.
Second paragraph
This is a
started.
horror movie.
Thank you for being such a good listener. It's so upsetting to me that Megan continues to be so crazy.
Oh, oh,
Now, I hadn't spoken to her in over 10 years, and she did not know anyone that I was talking to. So no one was like telling her stories. Like, I don't know what she thought I'd done or said that was like so crazy,
uh-huh.
but she had no information about me. I'd taken some very stringent steps to make sure that she had no idea where I lived, what I was doing, what job I had, right? I mean, I had to protect myself, kind of gone into my own little witness protection program, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So she didn't know anything. All of this had to have been whatever she told Claire had to have been made up whole cloth because she had zero information on me at
Uh-huh.
this point.
There's one piece of information that she had, which is that you hadn't come back to her with your tail between your legs saying, I was so wrong and I was such a terrible
Yes.
daughter and I missed you so
Yes.
much. That's the one piece of information that she had. And that's at least, you're right,
Right.
all of the
Right.
information she needed to know that you
Was crazy. So I'm just thinking, like, what the hell could she have told Claire? Like, now I'm imagining she's at lunch with this
uh-huh,
woman and she's telling her all this
uh-huh,
malicious gossip, which is a narcissistic abuse thing about
uh-huh.
me that is like absolutely has to be untrue because she doesn't know anything about me, like, literally anything about me at this
Right.
point in my life. And
Wow.
so I just sort of sat with it for a minute and I realized that, she had finger quotes sent it to me by accident and that she was fishing, right? She wanted me to write back being offended or sad or angry or whatever. She
Uh-huh.
wanted a reaction, right? So I was like, just not going to give it to her. Just going to ignore it, go on with my day. So I did. And then 5 or 6 hours later,
There's more.
oh, yes. Five
Okay.
or 6 hours later, I get another email in my inbox from her,
Oh, oh.
this time addressed to me and actually to me.
Uh-huh.
And the subject line was something like my last email or something like that. And it said, Dear Megan, I sent you an email in error earlier today. I just want you to know that when I called you crazy, I did not mean it in the clinical sense. Love, Mom. Because that made it all okay that she didn't
Oh,
mean
I
it in the
know.
clinical sense.
I don't. I
That made
just.
everything okay.
Well, this is what I meant about, I think was it our first episode where I was like, what psychoanalytic theory was she using in order to justify her behavior and stuff like that? She did that stuff all the time, all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And of course, no follow up, nothing even. I mean, it's already like fucked up like nobody's business, but then it's not even like, I love you and I know we're not talking or whatever, but I'm sorry I said that or nothing like that, right? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
Wow.
Yeah. That was it. So I didn't reply to that either because, again, like,
No.
what am I going to say? And, again, I wanted to continue our no contact. And I know she was just trying to poke the bear, right? And
Oh,
get me to
yeah.
wake up. Because she would
Right.
do that every now and again. She'd send out some flying monkeys or she'd go fishing and try to get me to contact her. Yeah, that one line
Wow.
just cracked me up for several years. I didn't mean crazy in the clinical sense.
Yeah.
What did she mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe she meant crazy like life of the party.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's like I sprayed you with gasoline but it's unleaded.
Actually perfect. I love that. Yes.
Love, mom.
I love. I love that she signed it. Love, mom.
Love, mom. And that's the thing, which is that is their love.
Yeah, that's what
That
love looks like.
that is their love. That's it. Oh,
Yep. Yep.
I just want to snarl for the rest of the day.
Story makes me laugh. I mean, it is horrible, but for some reason, it's just so. I think the reason it makes me laugh is because I'd successfully been no contact with her for so long. The
Yeah.
shit she was trying at that point was almost comedic. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it was so asinine that like
Yeah. Yeah. Everything was set up in your life to cushion whatever bullshit that was.
right.
Yeah.
Yes,
And repel,
exactly.
right? Just
Right.
whatever.
Yes. Nice
Yeah.
try, mom.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God. All right. So we always end the episode with talking each about a tool we used to get through the week when something triggered us. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
You go first because I did the mama first.
Oh, okay. I was in a really contentious meeting. I feel like I used this as an example a couple weeks ago, but this happens in my job more often than it should. I was in a really contentious meeting, an IEP meeting for those of you who are in the know with the lingo, which is at school for students who have special education. And this particular family had hired a lawyer to come in. And this lawyer was, being a lawyer, right? So was misrepresenting what we said and attacking us and, asking for things that were like you can't have one without the other, right? Like sort of trying to paint us in a corner, just doing lawyer things, trying to set up a case so that they can sue or whatnot. And I have an amazing team and we were all doing everything right. We have done no wrong by this child. But, sometimes people get in their feelings and hire a lawyer. So this lawyer starts in and I should mention this is part two of this meeting. We'd had a part one that was 2.5 hours and then we'd finally called it because it was just getting too late. So we, decided to have a part two. And as soon as this lawyer starts talking, I heard the tone of their voice. I'm pretty sure this person's a narcissist. I don't have any definitive proof, but I get a particular type of like spidey sense when I'm working with someone who has narcissism. Regardless, it triggered me, So what I did was, until it was my turn to talk, I very intentionally kept my intention on the bird feeder outside the window that I was looking at. And I just used my tools that I've learned over years of meditation, of how to like keep my attention directed at something and then redirect it back to that thing if it wanders. And I just used that bird feeder as my meditation object. And I just, as best I could in the middle of this emotionally very contentious meeting, I just kept bringing my attention back to the bird feeder. And I kept reminding myself that there were just birds out there eating and it's springtime and they're probably like going back to their nests and like having a lovely day, and that I could be in that space. I could be in that reality as much as I could in the middle of this meeting. So yeah, that's the tool I used is I very intentionally redirected my attention away from what could have been some incredibly unpleasant emotional upheavals from this meeting and towards something that felt good, that, helped release some of those good feeling chemicals in my brain instead of the not so pleasant ones.
I just love that. I love that because we think that the human world is so important and we're such a small part. And I could actually just feel that calm, right? Listening to you talk and the picture in my mind showed up of, these birds, and yeah, the context and I'm sure it bothered them too because you weren't looking at them. It's a bonus.
Yes. Well, just to be fair, they had called the meeting and insisted that everyone be there in person. And then at the last minute, they couldn't be there in person. So they were on Teams and the rest of us were there in person, of course. So I don't know if they knew I was looking at them or not, but that's also just such a funny power move thing to do. I'm insisting that it's in person and then not show up.
Uh-huh. That is so great. I want to thank you because I have been finding that the tools that you have been sharing in the episodes have kind of like subtly wormed their way into my choices. Like it'll just pop into my head and be like, oh, why don't I do blah, blah, blah? And then I'll be like 5 or 10 minutes later, I'll be like, oh yeah, Megan was using this one last week. So anyway, so
Aw,
it's, sometimes it feels like it's not a big deal, but it's really helpful.
thank you. That's very meaningful to me because as a healer, this is going to sound so cheesy. Oh my God, please start like, oh my God, waving the crystals over my chakras now. But that's really what's meaningful to me is to help people be able to have tools that they can use for themselves. Not to make
Yeah.
fun of crystals or chakras. I believe in both of those things.
Yeah, I hear you, but it's one of those things. Well, here you go. It's one of those things where it's like why don't I just use me? When I'm honest with someone about something that is so precious to me, I oftentimes have to couch it in some kind of sarcasm or some kind of, I don't know, prickly or like I can take it back or whatever because that part of me that loves whatever it is was also so hurt by people's derision, right? And criticism. And it's really just because like I really love that. I really love that,
That's
So
absolutely true. Thank you. Thank you for therapizing me. No, but you're right. Like you are. No, I mean, that was completely accurate. It's too dangerous to actually just be 100% vulnerable and authentic about something. You have to have a wrapper around it to show that if the other person uses like a malicious gossip or emotional blackmail or nitpicking, that's cool, man. I could take it. And so, absolutely, that's absolutely what I did. Thank you for helping me through that. I appreciate it.
oh, you're welcome. Okay, so the thing that helped me get through this week, so my husband bought me just out of the blue this little stuffed goat that has a noise box inside. And it is a screaming goat. So you press it and it goes, it's just, and maybe it's, Eric was saying that maybe we should use it on the pod, but, and one of the things is that I don't know if you've seen Thor, Love and Thunder, but there's these giant screaming goats that actually propel their like spaceship or whatever. And so there's all of these moments in the movie where the screaming goats come in, right? Like they arrive at some planet and it's like, ah! Anyway. And I also really like Norse mythology, like a little bit, so racism has kind of like made it a little uncomfortable. But there's like those little kind of things in the stories, because that's actually from like the original traditions. And so every now and then, it's not necessarily something that I've used like when I'm stressed out, but whenever I like come by it in the house, I'll just press it.
That's amazing.
And I just love it. And it's like, it's stupid and it's little.
Yeah.
There is no practical use for it, which is so important for my inner child.
Yes.
Right. It cannot be co-opted by that part of myself that wants to please the narcissist that's also inside of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it's not something that can help you be more of a useful object. It's just silly.
No.
It's just play.
No. Yeah. It doesn't make me more pleasant, right? It doesn't make me more neat and clean, right?
Or more accomplished, right?
Yes. It doesn't make me less disgusting.
Still mad about that.
Or crazy. It doesn't make me less crazy.
We should actually do a post on Instagram of like having people, we should put a couple, but we should have people put what's the most inappropriate quote to put in a child's bedroom and just like
it's really sad. I really want to put in my kid's bedroom, fear's the mind killer. I want to do the litany against fear. And I actually want to teach it to them because we can go over it at some point because I've actually like taught it to clients. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, maybe we should let our children select their own quotes when they get to that stage.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for punching up the parenting. I appreciate it. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, as always, I'm so happy that I get to do this podcast with you, and I just love you. And oh my goodness, I would not be anywhere near as mentally put together as I am if I hadn't had you to be my sounding board and also be my witness for this stuff, to grow up with me and to see it happen and to reflect back to me just how crazy pants it was. So thank you. I appreciate you a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. I love you. I love you so much. And you have always provided me with tremendous context and laughter. And yeah, you're so intelligent. I feel the same way about you, except that you are a different person, which is great. I adore you.
Oh.
And I have good reason. I've got evidence.
Aw.
I got evidence. So you know you're going to be called a terrible daughter no matter what. It doesn't matter what you do because they're just going to lose their shit. So why don't you just go with it and be the villain? Just be the villain. Thank you for listening. We'd be so grateful if you'd follow or subscribe and rate and review our new podcast on your favorite podcast app. Make sure to share it with friends, family, or anyone that you think may benefit from this content. And as a final reminder, you are not the crazy one.